Good afternoon, everybody. Good start work session. All right. Little different venue today. Our Westridge students are, of course, they're off this summer, so they're who stream our program, our work session. So we'll be down here so we can live stream it ourselves. So thank you for being here. We'll go through our work session agenda and also through the regular agenda in preparation, and then we'll see where we're at after that. I believe Mr. Robinson's been delayed. He's on his way, but we'll go ahead and get started. So looking at our work session, first up, and I look around the room, and I don't think Mr. Johnson or Mr. LaRue are here this evening. They were going to do a short presentation. There is, it's actually a law now for early release from classes for Bible time, and students are able to be signed out with their parents' permission for this organization to provide Bible study, and they would be off campus, and then they would be brought back, and they can only be released during times when it's not academic. And this is what Mr. Johnson, Ms. LaRue are going to be presenting, is sharing how they've done that in other school systems. But they're not here this evening, so we'll move on past that and see if they plan on being here next month, maybe. Next on our work session agenda, under procedures, Dr. Palmer has 3 items there that these are procedures, not policies, but he's going to come up to the podium there and kind of just briefly revisit those. We talked about these earlier, but with the new school year right around the corner, honestly, give him an opportunity to share these just to let the board be informed.
Feedback. I don't know if there's a way to adjust that, Mr. Maynard. I'll keep it kind of far away from me. Hopefully you guys can still hear me okay. I regret Mr. Robinson's a little bit late today with us. I believe he's the gentleman that requested this procedure. Without going through all the details of it, I know it's been shared with you, and so that you could see and review that procedure. The highlights of that basically are that Mr. Robinson had asked for, is there some way that we could put into a procedure, a way that our coaches could have additional help? And that's what this procedure does, is provides an opportunity for our head coaches to receive additional help. Of course, it's not required. A head coach does not have to have volunteer coaches if they don't want them, but this provides some guidelines under which they may decide to use volunteer coaches. And so, without reading all the bullet points, do you have any questions?
We didn't include that because it was just on the work session agenda, but we don't have a copy that we can share. I don't think, do we?
Does everyone have your device
Yeah.
with you and all?
Yeah.
I'll share it with you. I'll just go through and.
While Dr. Palmer's pulling that up, I would just add that we looked at other school districts around us who do take advantage of offering volunteer coaches, and it is prevalent in most school districts around. I think we want to keep close parameters on it. I know when we looked at it earlier, and Dr. Rouse attended our meeting, that was one of the concerns, is we didn't want to get loose and just be wild west with people just saying, oh, I want to be a coach, I want to be a coach. So we've put restrictions on how many people per sport in grade levels. interview process, background checks, TSSAA training, the same as any other coach. So it's not a situation where people will just walk up one day and say, hey, I think I want to try and help coach. So feel good about it. I think our coaches, we get a lot of requests for, I need some help. I need an assistant coach. And with the numbers that they have, I can understand why they need somebody. But Dr. Palmer, is that?
Everyone should have it now. It should have been shared with you. In addition, we put together a chart. You'll see a link in the document that I just shared with you as well. It's on page 2. And in that chart, you'll find that you have more specific recommendations or a max number of coaches per sport. I did, ask for the athletic directors from each of the high schools to meet with me and Mr. Carter. And as Mr. Carter said, we really took from a lot of the systems around us, a lot of other folks. We took time with our athletic directors to discuss it, work on the procedures, work on the bullet points that you have before you, as well as the numbers that you see in the volunteer and coaching positions chart on that page 2. Yes, sir.
Give everyone a minute to look that over, and if you have any other questions for Dr. Palmer and myself, be glad to entertain those.
Where did you get most of these?
Most of these came from, honestly, I Googled several school systems. I did. We talked to Johnson City School System, which is really easy. We kind of have a good connection there now. And so, so a lot of these are borrowed ideas and that sort of stuff. I'd love to say I came up with all this on my own, but I didn't.
They're good anyway, so.
That was the main thing. We wanted to have something that was good, that we felt good, that would work for our coaches. All right.
Any other questions or comments? All right, Dr. Palmer,
All right, so our
we
next.
may need to do the same thing on that one, the homeschool.
All right. All right, so,
I'm sorry, I had one question. and
Sure.
Not for overkill, but whenever I see language about multi-year contracts or agreements, we may want to make it clear that it's terminable at will at any time. If we deleted, contracts or agreements, fine, but we just may want to add that bullet point.
okay, sure. So it does say that, and I'm double checking because I want to make sure that you're okay with this, Mr. Spivey. But it does say,
Didn't see anything.
It says the coach or the principal in consultation with each other can end it at any time,
correct.
but
Where's
I agree
that
that-
one?
It also says volunteer assistants will be on a 1 year, 1 sport, 1 season basis. No
That's fine.
multi-year contracts
Yeah,
or agreements.
I missed that one bullet point, so never mind my comment. I'm sorry.
Okay, no problem. Okay, all
All
right,
right.
so then I will move on to homeschool procedure. This is one that, that we talked about in a different work session. You all asked about this procedure being written. Now, this one I believe is linked in your agenda. So if you click on the link in your agenda, you should have it. Let me know if you don't have it. If you need me to send it to you, I will. It's just simply labeled homeschool. All right. So this one, no? All right, then I will begin to share. Give me one moment.
This is another one that I'll make a comment on while Dr. Palmer's sharing that. In the most recent legislative session, new legislation was passed that's increasing the ability for students to participate in TSSAA or non-TSSAA sports. So now there's pretty much no sport that we offer, or any other district offers for that matter, that homeschool students would not be able to participate in. And that, when I spoke to Mr. McCarty about this in particular, that was his, kind of his vision, was that he felt like pretty soon, and I guess that was before the law was actually passed, that this was going to become more blurred instead of more distinctly different. It would become more blurred, the lines would, between athletics and activities that are considered extracurricular. So this is in line with that, but it still leaves some distinction there for our district. So, Dr. Palmer?
Good. I just had a question about that. So the new legislation, because I haven't read that bill, we don't get, if somebody's homeschooled, then the state's not providing any funding, correct?
Correct. Yeah.
But then they're gonna mandate the public education system to allow them to participate?
To try out.
And I don't want that to be taken the wrong way. I think kids should be able to play sports or any extracurricular. I just think it's important people understand that this repeated kind of attempt to take money away from public education and put more stressors on administrators and coaches that are getting small stipends anyway. I think that's unfortunate. I mean, I'll be all for it if they wanted to provide some more funding for school systems that are already strapped, but we're not sitting in Nashville.
Yes, sir. So this, I think you'll like this procedure and how it's written. It encourages folks who are homeschool folks that have already been with us to take care of the things that we would want them to take care of, just as if they were a Sullivan County student. So we put it in black and white, that they need to be a resident. They need to take care of filling out physical exam forms, all those types of things that we'd ask any other student to do that's a Sullivan County student. It's encouraged here that they pay fees or whatever else that's involved with those activities that they might want to participate in, which I think are all very important features to someone who may be coming to us from a homeschool environment. So one little caveat I'll add to this is that it does say in here that TSSAA sports are included, but I'll also say that we know we have some folks who are participating that are not TSSAA, and this allows for that because it does say school-sponsored activities in addition to TSSAA. So I thought that was an important feature based on what we talked about in a previous meeting.
Am I correct that if a city student who is a Sullivan County resident opts to play in athletics, they can choose which school they want to participate with?
That's my understanding. Yes, sir.
Repeat what he said. I can hear.
The question was, if we had a city school resident that wanted to play athletics, could they choose to play in Sullivan County? If they're coming from homebound, my understanding is that they would have that option. Because ultimately, they're still a Sullivan County kid. All right. So I know some of y'all are just looking at this for the first time. So I want to give you a minute to look at that. Are you ready to move on, or do you want another second to read over it?
And
Yes.
Does that, are you saying like if they're if they're say a city student and they want to participate in the county, or is that just for the homeschool?
Just for the homeschool.
Okay.
Dr. Palmer, I'm gonna apologize to everybody.
Yes, sir.
The work session agenda that Christie emailed out to you does have the links to these procedural documents. And I'm gonna resend that to everybody. But everyone should have that, and there are hot links inside of that work session agenda. So you are right, they were shared.
Okay.
But I apologize.
No problem. So the last procedure that we have, and this is entirely new, it is the alternative credit for PE. This is something, again, that a lot of the surrounding districts are already doing. And basically what it is, make a long story short, they're allowing other districts, and I'm proposing that we do the same, that other districts are allowing for activities that are school-based activity or school-sponsored athletics activities are, they're allowing some of those activities to count toward PE credit. There are some stipulations. We do want to have some guidelines pertaining to this. And again, these are borrowed bullet points from other districts. For example, a minimum of 80 hours of physical activity must be included in the school-sponsored activity that the student is asking for PE credit for. I think that's very important. This is, by the way, written in state law that we could make this request and approve and do this. One of the other caveats or little additions is that a student must complete the entire activity or season with the attendance rate of at least 90%. We wouldn't want a student to say, I'm going to be a football player, and they skip half the season and still get a PE credit. That wouldn't be right. So we have that there. And we also included a form at the end of those guidelines that the student would have filled out, signed by the coach, that student was trying to get credit for, that basically proved that that student did participate for the whole season, that activity did include 80 hours of physical activity. That form be filled out, brought to the counselor for that PE credit to be added. I do encourage the students in one of the bullet points to be sure that the activity they're actually seeking out to get credit for would be accepted by the principal before they participate in that activity, and then say, oh, well, I didn't know that wasn't included. So that is in there as well. We want to make sure that when students participate in activity they expected PE credit for, that they're, that they're sure that that's going to happen, that they're not mistaken.
Can this
So-
count as,
Go ahead.
can this count as an elective credit in phys ed?
Yes, that's what it would be. Well, it could.
It could
So,
take, could it take the requirement of, they're required to take one course in phys ed, right?
correct, and that's what it would count as. So if after they got their one required credit for PE, this is not intended to necessarily give them additional elective credit. It would just be for the one required.
I realize that, but my question is, can they do that? I'm afraid there may be a loophole where they would do this for elective credit. And they already have about 32 opportunities to earn their 28, right?
Right. We don't say that they can't, and that might be something that, well,
But it does
I
say
think it says-
alternative credit for physical education. It doesn't just say alternative credit.
Right.
As we know, anybody can argue anything, but I think it's probably clear. But to piggyback on that, my question would be that the guidance counselors and the principals need to figure out if there are any sports that would not constitute the 80 hours in advance, and if so, then those counselors need to know and have the forms already pre-printed. This is for a football, this is for a basketball, whatever. The student then needs to check with the guidance counselor's office to get that form to begin with. Then there's no miscommunication with the admin team or that student or that parent
I
And
like that idea.
that yes, they can get the credit for it. They know that going into it.
Right.
And that coach then needs to have a copy of that. So, because the coach is gonna be responsible for some paperwork,
Yes.
in order to be able to sign off at the end that they get the pass on the transcript.
That makes good sense.
Now, this says all TSSAA sports. Swimming is not a TSSAA. Can someone get alternative phys ed credit in swimming?
Yes. The intent is that they could.
But is it, yeah, I guess I'm saying is in the procedure where there wouldn't be any question if it happens. Cheerleading is another one that's not recognized as TSSAA.
Right. So just like the other procedure, it would definitely include TSSAA activities, but we do say approved school-sponsored athletics. So I would, without a doubt, to me, cheerleading's in there. And again, swimming, without a doubt, in my mind, that is easy, an easy decision to make.
I agree, I just want to make sure that there's no question later on our.
Absolutely. Yes, sir.
Would that be something we could reach out to TSSAA, or who would be able to say, swimming, cheerleading, yes, that's the intent of this, I wonder? Somebody with,
I don't mind to reach out to our local TSSAA rep, and I can get the name of that person from our athletic directors.
or it
to
may be
clarify.
somebody from TDOE,
Maybe so.
more
Yes, sir.
so,
Yes, sir.
because TSSAA are covered, but I'm like you, I don't want somebody to take it assuming,
Right.
and then it come up, oh, that one's doesn't count, you're a credit short.
I assume the dance team, and they have it, both the high schools would count. They do not get academic credit for the dance team, do they?
They do not.
Okay.
But I would definitely want them to under this procedure. So I'll be happy to check
I
on
think-
that and just to make sure. So
No.
if we want to withdraw or postpone this while I check, or however y'all want to handle, that's fine with me, because I definitely want to make sure that's correct, or make sure those folks don't get credit.
Can we just report back the
Well-
findings of that?
Procedures do not require
Right.
board approval
So we
anyway,
just-
so,
Just kind
I
of give
think
you feedback on
just
those.
report back and.
Sure.
Right.
I'll be glad to.
And does that last bullet kind of speak to the potential for students to try to take more than one? It says only one PE credit may be earned in this manner during the student's high school career. So they can't load up on them based on that,
That was the
right?
idea, is that
Right.
they're only
It's
going
a
to get the
one and
one
done.
that's required.
Right. You
That was
can't
the
say, oh, I
idea.
played football 4 years, I'm gonna get 4 PE credits.
Correct.
Electives, you can only
But-
get the one.
But if they've already taken their phys ed credit as a freshman, which most of them do, and they've decided to play a sport as a sophomore, this implies that they can get an
They can
additional
still get
phys
it.
ed credit, because it
Yeah.
says one phys ed credit in this manner,
Mhm.
which again, I'm okay with, but
Right.
I just want to make sure we're,
Yeah, I might want to go back and revisit the wording on that. I need to
Okay.
wordsmith that a little bit stronger.
okay.
I'll
But
fix
again,
that.
I think it goes back to, you know, anytime we change anything to do with the curriculum, it takes 4 years for it to catch up.
So
So
there's-
we're changing it right here. It's gonna take 4 years for those freshmen to know they can claim credit for it. And it just is what it is, but I think we need to be very clear on that.
Absolutely. Right. So, any other questions or comments?
Thank you, Dr.
Thank you.
Palmer. Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Next on our work session agenda, we have under facilities projects, we have some things that we'll need to vote on tonight, if possible. The first being the Miller Perry Elementary boiler. We had a presentation last time, but we had already discussed approving $300,000 for that. It's just, we need to get that out to bid if that's the direction we're going to go. So, $300,000, up to $300,000 from fund balance for that. So, any conversation, discussion, or questions on it? All right. Next, and I'll pass these down and across. The board approved reserving some funds from the undesignated fund balance for some projects that were really deemed necessary to proceed with and get completed, such as the softball field lights at Sullivan East High School, and then the tennis course lights. Then we looked at also the baseball and football. This is the bid tabulation you have there in front of you. I went ahead and made copies of this. And then the totals that we put in reserve for each of these, I'll share with you at this time. So the base bid there is the baseball field, and the low bid, and Progression Electric is the one who has the low bids on all the way across. So that would be the one we're comparing to. Progression Electric, their base bid for the baseball field was $355,000. So we had set aside $350,000 for that. So that came in $5,000 over what we had originally estimated. The first alternate would be the lights at the football field. We set aside $250,000 for that. That one actually came in at $422,000. Alternate 2 is the softball field lights. We had set aside $250,000 for that project. The low bid came in at $177,450. $177,450. So that one actually is below
We set aside for.
$250. Alternate 3, the tennis court lights at Sullivan East, we set aside $100,000, and the bid for that project is $192,000. Then if you go across and total those, the total of the amounts that we set aside was $950,000. And the total for those, the bid from Progression Electric is $1,146,450. $1,146,450, which would mean basically we would need to make an adjustment to what we had designated and add an additional $196,450 to move forward with those projects. All right, $196,450. Oh, no, excuse me, 96,000. Excuse me, I had an L on my additional. I counted as a 1. 96,450. No. That's right, 196. Yeah. No, I was right the first time. Thank you. 196,450. Thank you. Additionally, we had set aside $100,000 for the press box at Sullivan East. And there is a document in the agenda online in your packet that shows we had set aside $100,000, and there were 3 options provided. The first option was building onto and adding to the current structure, and that one totals $455,400. $455,400. And really, the only other option that we really had set out to consider was option B, which was to place a new prefab building there, and that came in at $504,850.
Say that again.
$504,850. So depending on if one of those were selected, we would need additional funding there as well. 355,400 if we went with option A, which is, there's a description of that in the agenda as well.
We're talking a total of 551, 850 for everything.
If we go with option A,
No, if we're talking about the lights and
okay,
the 355.
and the, okay, and the 355, which would be option A, correct? 196, 450 plus 355, 400.
Just for clarity, I think you're saying option A, but I think the way it's listed on our worksheets is option 1, option 2,
Okay.
option 3.
Yes,
Okay.
sorry.
No, you're fine.
On the press box. That
Yeah,
is,
they're
that
not.
is a very important point. These are bids on the lights. These are just a preliminary estimate for the press box. So still not gone out for bid or anything like that.
Do we have any architectural drawings for the press box?
No, no.
I didn't realize that we asked for anything other than an add-on to the visitor, to the home side.
Yeah, and that's why I say that third
That's all
option's
we
not,
asked for.
that's
We
it.
just, they throw those options at us, I think. I don't think those other options are really options.
Feasible.
Prefab, a lot of that costs is helicopter, I think.
Yeah.
Which is
It was
ridiculous.
about 80,000 to set it.
Say it again?
I believe the helicopter was about 80,000 to set the prefab, if I'm not mistaken. That was, I saw that somewhere.
You know, I'm not an expert on this, but I saw
25.
a crane lift a double wide, saw a crane lift a double wide, higher than that, and set it down like a prefab home that's a lot bigger than that. So I don't know why the helicopter was an option.
Matthew said it was only 25,000 for the
Yeah,
helicopter.
it says crane and helicopter, 25,000.
So I can't hear you.
It's the option 2 about the prefab, the note says crane hyphen helicopter, 25,000. So I guess they're envisioning both.
Does this include a complete tear down of the current press box?
Actually, I think it's adding on to that press box.
And
They were gonna leave that structure and build on the sides
it's
and then on top as well.
455,000 to add on?
Sounded high. I agree.
I don't see anything of that press box there that needs to be built around or saved. I would clear the ground and go from the bottom up. There's nothing there that I would want to save that I can see. That looks like a mess, I mean. I could be wrong, but I think that press box, it's probably been there 40 or more, 50 years. And it's wood.
I'd like to see it, like a drawing of it, or at least.
Ms. Davis, if we did that, are we going to enter on into architectural fees for drawings? That as another. What, any direction or?
From, what I'm thinking is, there's really only one option that I would, common sense option is to tear down what exists and rebuild something there, whether it be brick or wood, preferably something that won't rot, but I don't want to build around that one. I don't want a crane or helicopter something in that's prefabbed. I know logistics are a little bit hard there because it's up on that hill, but you can build in, it could be stick built, I believe, cheaper and do a better job. May not be the easiest thing to get to, but it was built there after the stadium was built now, so it could be done again. So I don't see any other option. And everything we've talked about here, the lights, I don't think that work's been done since the 60s. So probably some of that's been there since 1969. So it's 55 years old. I'm a little surprised about the difference in the football lights. It makes me wonder if they're replacing every pole, or they took advantage. They are, or do you know that? Or I just wondered if they took advantage of some of the existing poles. That was one of the thoughts. I think the bid that our estimate was based on, because some of them were shared with the baseball field. That's just a thought, but from my perspective, I think we need to move forward, tear down what exists there and build something there. And $355,000, you can build a nice house for that, really. I mean, that number's kind of high. So where did that number come from again?
And these are just preliminary estimates from Cane Rash West. And they brought in builders to look at it. And I'm not going to say that's high, but it sounds high
I mean, when you think about what it costs to build.
to build a house.
That's high. Common sense would tell you that's high.
Mhm.
Yeah. I know it's up on a hill, but.
So Mr. Price has suggested that we get a drawing,
But I'd like to see,
more
I mean, am I wrong? See what we're getting?
more
Or
firm.
at least
You mean,
a sketch?
you mean to have them tear a new sketch of what would be built there? I'd like to see what we're paying $355,000 for. But I think those other options are just out of the question. And maybe that number is not really that high. Maybe we don't have to spend that much, but we have to have a press box. But that blew my, well, actually, the real price is $455.
Right.
When you think about it.
Almost
We had
500.
100,000, so the real price was $455,400. Now, that just strikes me as out of the realm of what I would, the rest of these numbers were somewhat expected, or a little more, maybe a little less. That number just, I don't know where I'd like to see more about that. And I'm like Mr. Price, I'd like to see a drawing of what we're gonna get for 455, and maybe we don't need that big I don't know, maybe they're building something bigger than what I think.
Now, we have to go back to the county commission for increase in that 196,000,
We would,
196, 450.
Yes.
Resolution, it would
Yes.
have to be required before we award the bid.
yes, sir. Before we award the bid, we would need the resolution, I suppose. Yes.
And that would have to be on this Thursday night's agenda, maybe.
We have several resolutions and budget amendments that we're looking to do, so yes, we could. If the vote tonight is just on the lighting projects, we'll call them up here at the top, for the additional $196,450, we could put that in as a resolution to go on the agenda for Thursday at the work session for the county commission.
Question, can we approve the entire amount with the contingency to get a drawing and to not, I think I know what you're gonna say.
I would not. I'd want to know what I'm bidding on, what I'm voting on. At $455,000, that's almost $500,000 that we're looking at. And that comes out of fund balance, no question about that.
Just thinking about time-wise, the process takes so much time that,
I don't think time-wise you're gonna have time to have it in
No.
place this fall. I mean, it's
No.
gonna have to be for the,
Football season.
But that would be important for the lighting projects if we were going to move forward.
right, for the
could
lighting,
go
we need to
ahead-
move on that.
yeah.
And,
Do the lighting. I mean,
And,
do the
and
lighting
move
now,
forward with getting
then we'll get- I'm good with that.
a drawing or conception or, Chris, what do you think would be something? Yes. Kind of, okay, so the suggestion there, Ms. Davis said we could go back to Cane Rash West, ask them, you know, what is this 455,000? What is that exactly? More of a detailed explanation. And then if we wanted to, we could ask them to give us some kind of conception of what they would actually propose building. So we could do that and come back next month with that. But we would, if I'm understanding correctly, though, we would vote to take an additional $196,450 from the fund balance to complete the projects listed as the base bid of baseball field, football field, alternate 1, alternate 2, softball field, and alternate 3, tennis courts. And that would get us to the bid of Progression Electric, and we can move forward.
and they can have that completed in 41 days. Is that the way I'm reading that bid?
Yes.
41 days.
31, and then 41 would be the max for the football field.
Okay.
one more question. The money for the drawing, the conceptual drawing, where would that come from?
We've got 100,000
We have
already
100,000,
approved
right.
for the press box, so it could come out of that 100,000.
100,000.
Yeah.
Sounds good.
Any idea on what that would cost?
So the question was, we have $100,000 set aside for the field house. Would we be able to use those funds to do the conception of the drawing of what would be proposed? Architect, any fees? Yeah, right. Yes, that'd be a yes. Thank you all. So we'll make that recommendation tonight and ask for a vote, and then we'll get a resolution. All right. The last item on here, and this is one that we had talked about and actually had taken to the architects for drawings when we were looking at the tennis courts at Sullivan Heights Middle School and the track at Sullivan Heights Middle School. The track came in, both of these projects came in considerably higher than what we had set aside. And so it was concluded that ESSER would not be able to support both of those projects. And the track was one that definitely benefited the school and was used by the school every season and by gym classes. So that one's currently underway. The question was, what do we do about the tennis courts? And I think what I would recommend is we recently received bids on the paving at Central Heights Elementary. That came in higher than what we had anticipated. So we will need additional funds there to finish that out. Ms. Buckles, do you want to speak to that? We have a couple other options on the table that or one option at least, and we've been talking about this, but I asked Ms. Buckles if she'd present this.
So, we had originally looked. Even on.
There you go.
We had originally looked at doing a Sullivan Gardens walkway, and we had set aside $100,000 for that. Obviously, that's not gonna touch that. So the paving at Central Heights, if we look at doing just the main entranceway and then the little circle there at the very front, and also doing the little short straight piece where the cafeteria food enters and the cafeteria workers park, that totals $134,000. So we can take the Sullivan Gardens walkway, 100,000 that we had set aside, include it with what we had left over, which was, I forget what that figure was, but it ends up giving us a leftover amount of 77,000 if you all choose to do the Sullivan Heights paving, those two projects, the straight piece, which is for the cafeteria, and then the main entrance and circle where the buses and visitors actually park. That's $134,000. That leaves us $77,000 in ESSER 3. There are more paving projects that need done. I don't know if anybody's been behind Holston, but behind Holston, where the buses travel every day, is really honestly very rough. There are ruts back there. Indian Springs, the main entrance where that goes around behind the building, around that pod area, and where parents let their children out to come into the pod doors, that needs repaved. We do have in contingencies $204,000 from other projects. So we do have that sitting there that we're waiting for those projects to finish. And then we also have that $77,000. I guess when I talked with Mr. Carter today, one of the things we were talking about is going ahead and letting architects, getting bids out to see what the Indian Springs project would cost, and just the back of Holston, not all of Holston campus, just that back area where all the buses travel every day, in the cafeteria and that sort of thing. To go ahead and get architects and bid those out and see what they come in at.
Did I hear you mention $100,000 set aside for Sullivan Gardens walkway?
Yeah, so way back.
Yeah.
At the very start, we had set aside $100,000 for the Sullivan Gardens walkway and $6,000 in architect fees. We've not touched that $100,000 because obviously we're not gonna be able to do that walkway for $100,000. So that money is sitting there to be used. We would use some of that to pay off this Central Heights because it came in higher than we estimated. We had estimated right around 100, and just the main part alone came in at 116, I think it was.
I guess my only question would be, I mean, do we have any idea of the cost of the Sullivan Gardens walkway? Because I don't want that kind of stuff to get lost in the shuffle, and I'm not trying to micromanage, but sometimes I feel like Mr. Robinson might feel like he's the only person that says stuff about that area. I just want to make sure that doesn't get lost, you know.
So my understanding, I'll let you speak to that.
Yes,
I'm sorry.
that is,
Stanley, too.
okay, that is included in the facility study that's being done right now currently. So that's not, it's not lost, it's just, it's not ready to be presented tonight.
That answers my question. Great.
Because I think they were even discussing not just doing the walkway, but then moving kind of behind the building to do a gym and bring the cafeteria over instead of being in that outside area.
Does these funds have to be committed by September and spent?
They have to be committed by September 30th. We do have an extension to finish projects. I have a meeting, I think it's about the 22nd or 23rd of June to figure out what paperwork I've got to file to ask for those extensions. The funds still have to be obligated by September 30th.
We need to move tonight on a recommendation.
I think it would be great if we could move on a recommendation for Central Heights and then also a recommendation just to go out and get bids on that to see what we're facing for Indian Springs and Holston if possible.
What was the timeline for paving Central Heights?
I believe that was 45 days.
45? So that would get us before school starts.
Yes.
Right.
It'd be real close.
Yeah, so we need to get the others if we're
Yeah.
going to do them.
So the recommendation would be to approve for Central Heights to do the entryway and the area near the
Entryway and alternate number 3, which is the
Alternate 3.
cafeteria drive.
and then a recommendation to receive bids or for.
Architect services and bid, the
For
back of
Indian
Holston and the drive around the pod at Indian
Indian
Springs.
Springs.
Can you include the front area there at Indian Springs also where the buses park?
Could we do that as an alternate?
As an alternate?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I believe that's the area where the buses unload there, isn't it? In-
They do
in-
unload at the front.
So that's an
Parent
area,
traffic is back behind the building and at the pod, and then the buses are at the front. Where the buses are it's rough too, but it's not as bad as
It's Holton.
behind. Right.
so that one we'll need to just add to the regular agenda.
They were just gonna look at doing the track instead of the tennis courts too?
I believe right now that would be current, what we probably should do, just based on the money with ESSER that we were going to use being limited. I think this position over at Holston with the buses, I think some cars couldn't get through there now if they were driving around there. That's correct,
It
isn't it?
is safe to say that if I drove my Mini Cooper, I could be without my wheels on the ground at one spot.
So I just think for the immediate time, we should probably focus on that and anything we could do at Indian Springs to create those, because those are a daily usage. The tennis courts definitely is something,
I think it's important that we prioritize things, like that.
thank you. And I think that's the correct term, is just prioritize, not move it out,
Yeah.
not remove it or anything, but just for right now, priority of student and school. So we'll add that to do approval for Central Heights options, or the base bid in option 3. And then architect fees and bids for Holston Elementary around the back and Indian Springs Elementary, the pod plus an alternate for the front. And we'll make that for a vote tonight as well. Thank you, Ms. Buckles. That takes us through our work agenda. We'll go to the regular agenda now. There are some items on there to discuss. Yes, sorry.
So for the military boiler, are we going to do the HVAC system instead of the boiler? Is that what?
I think what was originally discussed was 300,000 for the boiler and not the other sections at this time. I think that's where we were before the presentation last time. And so I just was basically wanting to confirm that is what we're going to continue with.
What was the difference in the money on that?
I believe the presentation they made had it right around $7 million. And so
That was for the one that they did.
with the geothermal, yeah. And I don't feel comfortable that we would have fund balance or there's no more ESSER left. I don't think we are in a position to do that. That is a project that we're going to have to address eventually. But I think if we don't put a boiler in there before this fall, that school will probably be without heat.
Yeah.
So I think the recommendation would be we proceed with that boiler at this time.
I would like to see though, eventually to do the HVAC system, because they've got all of those window air conditioners and stuff, and they're loud.
Yes. Thank you. Okay. On the regular agenda, as we move down through there, letter C, this year, I've served on a steering committee with the Strong ACC, which is, it's a partnership between Virginia and Tennessee, and it's all centered around the goals that we all aspire to for all of our students. Basically, there's 6 goals: healthy beginnings for students, thriving at 5, early grade success, supported and connected youth, workforce-ready, college-bound graduates, and economically independent young adults. Nancy Dishner, Dr. Nancy Dishner with the Niswonger Foundation has chaired this steering committee this year, and basically just looked at practices that could help support the goals that I just mentioned. And they've asked that we just become a regional partner. There's no commitment, no financial, nothing that we have to do. You've got an attachment in your board agenda that just says, as a partner, we would support and promote their regional agenda, which are those goals. Leverage organizational resources, including financial when possible, to support efforts within the organization to advance strong ACC goals. Attend the partnership meetings, which those are typically 3 times a year. Use the influence to advance the regional agenda within our organization. Advocate for the regional agenda of the strong ACC with other community leaders, policymakers, and funders, and support employee participation in strong ACC strategies and initiatives based on interest. And then utilize communication channels available to the organization to advance their collective impact efforts, messaging, and program offerings available to employees and their families. So basically, during this year of the steering committee, it's been looking at things that work-based learning, everything that we worked on more was towards those workforce-ready and college-bound graduates. And of course, working with economically, to raise economically independent young adults is the goal there. But I'd like to ask for, I guess, the board's approval to be a partner or be on that committee and work with them on that. It's been a very educational year working on the steering committee. And like I said, there's no other commitment. Most of the meetings have all been virtual. We did have a meeting at TCAT over the Boones Creek area, the TCAT campus, and Jeff McCord and David Hicks, the president of TCAT, were both involved and included this as well. So it's just expanding our partnership for those goals that I believe we're committed to already, but expanding our reach with partners. So any questions? Letter D, we have 3 vehicles that we're asking the board to approve, putting those on Gov Deals. Those are, more details about those are in your board packet as well there. Moving on down to communication and director's comments, 2 or 3 things that I'll be mentioning tonight. One, I'd like to remind everybody that we'll be back. Chairman Price, Mr. Loesch, and I will be back at the Budget Committee meeting at 4 o'clock tomorrow. Currently, that's set to be held at the Bluntful campus. I believe there's something already scheduled in the courthouse. So that's at 4 o'clock tomorrow. Additionally, today, Commissioner of Education for our great state, Commissioner Reynolds, Lizette Reynolds, visited Rock Springs to tour our summer camp there. She was very impressed, took some good notes, and actually made some invitations to Miss Dinsmore and her team to do a presentation on the work around dyslexia that they've been doing. Had a good opportunity to get in some conversation about early education and the fact that putting more of our resources into kindergarten, first and second grade, and pre-K as well, as opposed to waiting till third grade to catch students for not passing a test to determine whether they're going to move on to fourth grade or not. Smaller class sizes, more training, more opportunities for teachers to catch students in those early foundational grades. So it was a good conversation. And as I said, there were some notes taken and some offers made to participate in some future presentations. So that I hope it had a good impact and a positive outcome. They were very impressed with our summer camp and what they're doing there. Another week of summer camp still to go, and summer camp's being held at Rock Springs, as just mentioned, excuse me, Ketron Elementary, and up at Bluff City Elementary as well. I'd like to thank Ms. Akerd. We've been knocking on wood because there's just not been any problems to say, and I don't want to jinx it with another week or so left, but it's been real. She is organized and put together a really great camp this summer, and things are going really well. So thank you for everything you've done, Ms. Akerd, and everybody else involved. There's a lot of hands involved in that. Moving on down, unfinished business, policy 4.406. At our last board meeting, there was some language that was requested to be added to that internet, the use of internet and the use of computer systems that spoke to taking away the ability for people after they've been terminated to be immediately removed from access to our internet services and internet and email and such. Excuse me. And that's reflected in the that change. So be asking for approval of that on second reading tonight. If anybody had any questions, Mr. Maynard's here. But it's basically to the effect of what was requested to be added to that. Letter B, blended learning. We've met and talked about this. We had presentations Dr. Palmer's made. We would like to get approval tonight to move forward with that. Marketing and advertising and promoting that is necessary. Dr. Palmer, anything else you want to say to that, or?
I think we had a couple meetings on that. I'm always happy to answer any questions, but I don't have anything.
The only item that we're asking for a vote to approve this to move forward, but the only other item is the funding for the Pearson Online. Would like to be able to set up to be able to offer this to up to 50 students. And so asking for $150,000 to be budgeted towards this. And if we did that, that would allow us to take up to 50 students. The only question is we've got to find exactly where the $150,000 is. But we will be working on that within the budget that we have.
Is this the program? Palmer?
Yes, this,
Can I ask a question?
absolutely.
You or Mr. Palmer, to you or Mr. Carter, are your intentions to have a separate school number for what you're doing here? How are you going to do that?
We are not planning on having a separate school number. Each student would basically remain in their zone. That's important for a couple different reasons. For one, if we have a student that chooses down the road to participate in a sport or an athletic activity of some kind, then it would already be pre-designated where they would go, for those different sports. In addition to that, if they required special services, additional services, if the student had an IEP or that sort of thing, then if they stay within, if that student is sort of has that designated zone that they're already working within, then it's easier to designate who would be in charge of helping the students with their services.
Could you give me the obvious negatives for having a different number, or are there any?
The negative to having its own individual school number would be the fact that it would be difficult to decide where those students would be, where you'd pull services from to help those students. In addition to the fact that if you had your own school number and based on the students, of course, we would absolutely do our best for those students to be successful. But if it turns out the students were not very successful, it might get that school with its own school number in a bad position with the state. That's probably the easiest way to put it.
That's what I thought you might say.
Yes, sir. This is true. I know you're going. Yes, sir. It's an upside. It could be.
The scores could be low enough to reflect poorly on that school, that individual school.
Yes, I think there was a couple of schools this year that their testing data, when they had the individual number, it put them on the watch list because.
And the nature of what you're doing may lend itself a little more.
It might.
could.
I certainly hope not, but it definitely could. And of course, we want to do what's right for kids. And it may not necessarily mean that we're doing everything that's, that looks good for the school. But that's not what it's about. We want to do what's right for kids.
I understand.
So I don't know how that would go, but I certainly wouldn't want to put us in a bad position.
But that's the thought process.
Yes, sir.
Okay, that's what I want to know.
Yes, sir.
And it's better to count this as a program rather than as a separate school.
I think so.
I believe so.
I think so.
When you go to a separate school and you have to make changes in the future, then that means closing that school, means things that are negative then, whereas with programs, that's just toward action.
Yes, sir.
And this has the potential to be a good program, has potential to be successful, and not start with the negative context of being a low-performing school.
Yes,
And that's
sir.
what could happen.
That's what could happen. Yes, sir.
Dr. Palmer, just briefly, the teacher of record is not going to fall back on one of our teachers either. So I think that's important to understand, that it's not like, oh, I'm an English teacher, so that student I don't touch, I'm going to have to take and hold them onto my accountability. It doesn't go with that teacher, correct?
That is correct. It goes with Pearson.
How does it work?
So when we partner with Pearson, who is the third-party vendor that we're looking at partnering with, then they're actually providing in-person teachers that will meet our students online. And those teachers will be the ones that actually are the teacher of record.
So it won't impact, because in times past, you might have had a situation where a student wasn't in a classroom, but that teacher of record just had to put them down as they didn't have the instruction the amount of time, but they still were the teacher of record, so.
That's right, and that happened several times during COVID. We had teachers, numerous teachers, that were working with students that their only interaction was was online, never really sat down and met with the student. And first of all, it's really hard on a lot of teachers that felt like that's not fair, that they were having to take scores for students that they had never personally met with. In addition to the fact that, despite the fact we have excellent teachers do a really great job, I'm very proud of what we did when we went through COVID. I think they couldn't have done a better job. They were great. But at the same time, they were also put in a position to try to have online school without the training and without the background. There's a lot of obstacles that they had to deal with that, of course, I wouldn't want to put them back in that situation again.
These are the things I was thinking about. I wonder what you.
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
Yes, sir. Anything else? All right,
Thank you, Dr. Farnum. Thank you. Letter C is our cybersecurity insurance. In your board packet, you do have the full breakdown of each of the three companies that submitted bids. The recommendation by Steve Harville from McGriff Insurance was the company Coalition at $37,126.78, which would give us cybersecurity coverage. I think Mr. Maynard's looked through that and addressed the areas that we would need to update or upgrade eventually, or they were able to take us on at this point with, I don't know, I don't think we'd call them contingencies, Eric, would we? They pretty much were prepared to take us as is. So I'd like to make a recommendation tonight to accept Coalition's bid of $37,126.78 for cybersecurity insurance. That's an annual. Yeah, but as Chairman Price just said, it's one of those items that the longer we go without, the more we're putting ourselves out there. And talked with Mr. Bailey, and he was in agreement. We're doing this because our business has students who have families and all their personal information that we house. It makes good sense to protect them from outside hackers and forces that might do wrong with that information. So that'd be my recommendation. Any questions? We've talked about letter D during our work session. Letter E, we've also talked about, and we're going to make a recommendation to approve an additional $196,450 to complete the projects for the lights at the football, baseball, softball, and tennis courts at Sullivan East High School. So we'll be asking for a vote there. Mr. Loesch has a list of teachers who've successfully garnered their tenure, and so we'll be asking for approval of that list to grant tenure to those educators. Letter B under new business is the graduation requirements. That's pertaining to Dr. Palmer's presentation during the work session on the PE credit. So that is a policy. Do we need to do anything, since it's not procedure, it's policy, with that about the one credit and sports outside of TSSAA? Do we need to postpone voting on that one?
I did provide to you an answer for that question. It's in your email. Basically, I'm gonna grab the screenshot. State says, students shall complete 1/2 credit of physical education. Requirement may be met by substituting a documented equivalent time of physical activity in marching band, junior ROTC, cheerleading, interscholastic athletics, school-sponsored intramural athletics, and other areas approved by local Board of Education. I believe that's our answer. So if we say TSSAA, school-sponsored activities, then and it's approved by this board, I think we're good to go on the activities.
Ms. Stanley's asked the question to the board, do we need to make a list of those activities, or does school, what was the language? School-sponsored activities, is that appropriate? I think that's appropriate, okay, all right. Then we will vote, or get a vote on that one as well. Waiver of rules to adopt on the first reading will be the ask. We do have changes to the Students' Rights and Responsibilities Handbook. Mr. Foster's here. If you do have any questions on that, but I'd like to ask for approval of that. It's in the work agenda. If you have any questions, be glad to take those. And then resolutions, we have two different resolutions there. Amendments to the general purpose fund budget for various different accounts, and then a resolution to amend the 23-24 school nutrition budget for various accounts. We'll do those separately. And then on the back, budget amendments, several different budget amendments. It's that time of year, we're trying to finish up and close out FY '24. So several of those, we'll group those together. Chairman Price, I think that, any questions on any items on the agenda? We got it early. If there's no other discussion, Mr. Jones?
At last Wednesday, there was a question concerning the fund balance. Do we have an estimate yet on the fund balance? I know y'all were gonna meet and.
Yes, sir. Monday morning, went over, met with Mr. Bailey, Ms. Buttram, and we went through our expenditures. It was a very productive meeting. We had good conversations, and we didn't look. Revenue.
I'd wait for more details rather than,
I don't want to over.
the 2.9 million that we got last year for the sale of Colonial Heights and Bluntville. Has that been written in as a restriction now? Because we put it in capital improvements, I think is what the board action was. Has that been done? I guess I need to ask Kirsten or.
There we go. We'll check on to see if there's a reserve for that 2.9.
I was looking at the state comptroller's report on uncommitted fund balance, and it was confusing there about the 2.9. It's listed, but I think we committed it for capital improvements initially when we sold the.
Capital improvements?
Yes.
Yes, we did. So how are you asking it was accounted for? What, I couldn't hear you.
I'm just trying to decide what part of the fund balance is it included with, the uncommitted fund balance or just the full fund balance? Because the last report, fiscal year '23, was a little confusing because it showed 27 million in fund balance, but that included the sale of Colonial Heights and Bluntville. It also included some other accounts that we had set up, I think, for turf replacement and things of that nature. So it's important when you look at that total to make sure that we take out what is committed.
That's a good question. I took for granted that it was included, so that's a good question.
We'll meet back at 6:30. I'm not used to doing that part. Let's go down.